Welcome to another episode of On Patrol with the Suffolk County PBA. I'm CJ Hutter, the treasurer of the PBA.
I'm Tanner Brandemore, the sergeant at arms with the PBA.
And today we're excited to have Mike VanDenburg on with us. Mike is the founder of Promise of Hope Foundation. He's been a part of a lot of great foundations that help the community. And he's somebody that we've been trying to have on for a long time. And because of all his involvement in helping community with any way he can, it's just been hard to line up our schedule. So thanks for coming on, Mike.
Thank you guys very much. And first and foremost, congratulations. This podcast has really taken off for you guys.
Oh, thank you.
You may not even need to be cops anymore. You'll be able to just go out and do your podcast and make gazillions of dollars and not have to worry about that amazing pension you all wind up with.
Well, thank you, Mike. We put a lot of hard work and time into this podcast, and we love doing it. And it's a great way to be able to bring attention to a lot of the issues we care about, not only in Suffolk County, but throughout the state and country. And we have a lot of fun bringing attention to people in our community, such as yourself, who do a lot of great work for the people within New York and especially the metropolitan area.
Well, I thank you guys very much. It's an honor to be here, and I'm always glad to take some time and speak about some of the work that the foundations do. I know I get a lot of credit for it. Sometimes I'm the face out there more often, but there's a lot of people in the background, just like anything else, that really make it happen. And the work that we do, especially with the Promise of Hope Foundation, is not always fun. Mm-hmm. But it is definitely needed.
Yeah. So Promise of Hope Foundation is one of the great groups out there. And for anybody who doesn't know exactly what the Promise of Hope Foundation is or what your mission is, some of the stuff you guys do, why don't you just kind of explain it to our viewers, quick, so they have an understanding.
So the Promise of Hope Foundation, we started in 2018. And it was my partner and I, Scott Coletti. We were very blessed. We had a successful business. We made a good income. And we always did little things to give back in the community. But we wanted to be something that was just more substantial and more continuous. So we opened up our own foundation called Promise of Hope. And at that point, we really didn't know what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. We're going to do something, but we just don't know what. And, I'm a true believer in just move forward and everything else will work itself out. It'll fall into place. Just as long as your feet are moving forward, everything else in life will fall into place. So we opened the foundation in the summer of 2018. In September of 18, I received a phone call from my superintendent that my daughter's guidance counselor's son, who was a Boy Scout, he was walking through the woods hiking with his troop. His father was one of the troop leaders, and they came out of the woods in Calverton. They were going to cross over the road and go back into another hiking trail. And at that time, a drunk driver came along and mowed 7 of them down.
That's horrible.
7 of the kids got injured, but Andrew lost his life.
That's horrible.
And as the conversation progressed, we heard that the family was really using everything they had to make sure Andrew had a proper funeral. And I knew John McMorris as my daughter's guidance counselor, who was very instrumental to me in helping my daughter. And I said to my partner, we got to pay for the funeral. We have the assets aside. We have the foundation built. Let's go pay for the funeral. So we go, we pay for the funeral. I show up to the funeral. We pay respects to the McMorris family. And I saw right there the effect that this had on them in such a dark moment, the worst moment of anyone's life, right? There is no worse moment. Losing somebody is horrible. Losing your kid is on another level of horrible. And, but I saw the gratitude they had and the burden that was lifted from them. And I walked out of the wake that day, called my partner, and I said, we have our mission. Mm-hmm. Our mission is to make sure that no child who loses their life ever has to not have a proper funeral for themselves. And that's our mission.
So I find it interesting that you guys created the foundation before really knowing what your mission was going to be. And Promise of Hope, the name in itself, when you talk about a family at one of their most vulnerable and worst times of their lives, right? The loss of a child. Now, being able to come in and help with the expenses that go along with that, with a proper funeral, proper wake, proper services, it could give that family that promise of hope into the future. Like, all right, during this dark time, there are people out there that are willing to come together and help within the community.
It is such a profound feeling that I get because we show up to every funeral. And, and we go to every wake, not every funeral. We go to every wake. If we pay for it, we want to make sure not only are we writing the check, we're showing up and letting them, we really do support you. We are really here for you. And, the amount of gratitude, there's so many times I've went to a wake and the family will hand me a handwritten card at the wake. Now, Grant, think about this. 3 days ago, they just lost their child. Somewhere in these 3 days, their gratitude for the foundation paying for that funeral was so much, they sat down and took the time to handwrite a card to make sure they handed it to us the day we visited. To me, that had to mean so much to them for that dark moment that they needed to stop and write that card and give it to us. It was just, that's my convincer. Like, we are doing the right thing. This has to be done. We could never stop doing this. No child on Long Island should ever not have a proper service. Yeah,
that's, as a father, that's something I couldn't even imagine having to do, right? One, losing a child, that's every parent's worst nightmare. But then after that, being able to feel support from the community and feeling the need and desire to thank people for that support and put pen to paper like that's the kind of letter and kind of thank you note that no parent ever wants to have to do. It's incredible to even have to be able to, be able to gather the strength to be able to do something like that.
It's absolutely remarkable. And to, some of these parents, and I guess just as a human being, right, when you're hit with such a devastating tragedy, the human spirit just carries us, and it just helps us move forward. Last night I was on the phone with Emily Flynn's mom. Emily Flynn's a young 18-year-old who lost her life returning some stuff to her ex-boyfriend's house, and he shot her and killed her. And last night I was on the phone with her mom, and, in her gratitude, it was so profound, and she was like, you don't understand. Like, you really helped make sure our daughter had a proper send-off, and to hear that pain in her heart still and hear all that stuff, it just, we know we're on the right course. We know, what we're doing is dark and sad, but it is the right thing to do.
Yeah. And Emily Finn, that was one of those cases that it just resonated throughout Suffolk County, right? It's one of those things that just hits home because this was a young woman who was killed by her boyfriend, right? They were going through a breakup.
She was a freshman in college, I think.
Yeah. She just graduated high school.
Yeah,
first semester of college.
Young girl whose life was cut short from a tragedy. And it was a high school sweetheart, I believe, right? And the families actually knew each other. So both sides of the equation here had feelings for both sides of the equation when it comes to the families. So I think that was one of those stories that resonated throughout Suffolk County and became, big news and something that touched the hearts of a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. She was miraculous, and as you learn more about, the case and as the case moves forward, Emily didn't want to go. Emily was reluctant to go, didn't want to deal with it. And, her ex-boyfriend's parents convinced her, please, he's not doing well. His mental health isn't great. Can you please just help him out a little bit? And, it'll make him feel better if you come. And, obviously that didn't work.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to live with, and because you're trying to do the right thing for a person, right? And in the course of trying to do the right thing comes this ultimate tragedy that nobody is ever really prepared to deal with.
No, it is unbelievable. So we were on the phone with Emily last night, and, and we get another call last night. There's another child that passed away from Western Suffolk BOCES. And, as crazy as it sounds, we had, I say busy, but I don't mean it in an insensitive way. We had our most cases of children last year. In 2025, we paid for 24 children's funerals last
That's
year.
incredible.
Wow.
24 kids that are gone way too soon. Sadly, and this isn't the first time in our history, is we had 2 murders. We've had Andrew McMorris, who was run over by a drunk driver, it was truly a tragedy and, something that should have never happened.
Right.
It wasn't murder in per se.
Right.
Where, Emily's was a murder, and Liam, a young 14-year-old boy from West Babylon was at a house party. The wrong people came. They should have never been there. They heard about it on social media. They were barging their way in, forcing their way through, a little pushing and shoving, get out of the house, get out of the house. One of the kids pulls out a knife and stabs Liam, and Liam loses his life, and those things, like, we could all put ourselves in that position, right? We were all at house parties when we were kids. We were all at a place and trying to throw someone out that shouldn't be there. And should it end in your life being taken from you? No, it should never end like that. Those were 2 of some of the saddest cases that we had to deal with as a foundation. But, at the end of the day, it's all terrible, right?
Yeah.
Even when there's a child who's sick and passes away at a young age, it's not fair. It's not fair. And I think Mayor Adams said it best. Not a big fan of his, but he said, one thing best. He said, if you're a spouse and you lose your partner, you're a widow or a widower, right? And if you're a child and you lose your parents, you become an orphan. But if you're a parent and you lose a child, there is no name for it.
Right.
And there's no name for it because it's so friggin' horrible that you shouldn't even have to ever address that. So no one ever made a name up for that.
Right.
It's
one of those unnatural things that nobody expects to have to deal with in life.
Absolutely.
At some point in time, you expect to lose your parents. It's kind of natural, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're older. They're expected to predecease you. Siblings, it's kind of natural. At some point in time, typically the oldest sibling passes first.
Yeah.
It's natural. It's not natural to lose a child.
It is so unnatural and so painful. So for the last 8 years, we've been very blessed with tremendous amount of support, from the community, from, other business owners like us. And, the foundation has really grown and taking on more cases. And I don't, like we say, last year was a very busy year. We had 24 cases, more than any year before. I don't want to think to myself, well, more kids are dying.
Right.
I just want to look at it as just more people are knowing about the foundation.
More awareness.
More awareness of the foundation, that there's resources out there that can help a family that's in need.
Right.
I don't think more kids are dying. I just really think there's just more awareness, and that part of it is amazing, and we do really appreciate everybody giving back, and as along with, doing children, during 2020, during COVID, when, the whole world wanted to defund the police,
right.
And we were always strong believers in the police, and we were always strong believers in law enforcement. We all heard about Officer Sakos, who was killed in New York City. Simply, it was a nighttime. He was working a fatal accident. He was directing traffic, and he gets mowed down by a drunk woman, high, drunk, had just got done doing a podcast.
She was doing a podcast, yes.
A podcast on defunding police and doing everything they can to destroy the police.
I think she was smoking a joint on the podcast while they were recording.
And she mows down Officer Sakos, and she kills
horrible.
him. And, we reached out to the NYPD and we said, hey, listen, when an officer dies like this, who pays for the funeral? And, the union leader at the time, Pat Hendry, he's like, the family. The family pays for the funeral.
A lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah. And I'm like, That's unheard of. Unheard of that the department doesn't cover the funeral expenses.
Yeah.
So instantly we said, we're going to pay for his funeral. And when we did more research, Nassau, Suffolk, New York City, Westchester, the departments don't pay for the funerals.
Right. And these are cops that are losing their lives in the line of duty, right? They're serving their communities. A lot of people, I think, just assume the municipalities pick up the funeral costs. Like it's just part of the standards, but it's not. A lot of this burden falls on the family.
That's crazy. I never even thought about that. You like you said, you just assume.
Yeah.
But I guess.
Right. I mean, it's just a natural thing. And anyone we bring it up to, I remember being at an event in the city, and somebody introduced me to a former commissioner, and they're like, hey, this is Mike Promise of Hope. He pays for our police's funerals. And he's like, why? He goes, the department covers that. And they're like, no, he doesn't. He goes, absolutely. And like, we're almost getting into a little bit of an argument. And I'm like, well, I don't want to get into an argument with, the past commissioner. So I kind of like toned it down a little bit, and he left and he walked over and he asked someone else and he walked back. He goes, I apologize.
Right.
He goes, I cannot believe this.
Right.
It's almost unbelievable that the department and listen, rightfully so, cops don't have small funerals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
A lot of people want to pay their respects.
A lot of people want to show their respect. They shut that funeral home down for a week.
Yeah.
They can't bring anybody else in while there's, a police officer's funeral, especially line of duty.
Right.
So once we did SACOS, we made a commitment. Any police officer that loses their life in the line of duty between Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, New York City, we're covering their funeral expenses.
That's great to hear, because in a time where a lot of the mainstream media and a lot of the politicians out there, they try to almost create this divide between the communities and the police departments that they serve. It's great to hear, especially for our membership who's out there watching too, that there are people in the community and there are organizations like Promise of Hope Foundation that are willing to put themselves out there, say, we support the police, we're here to help any way we can. And in the darkest moments, you're there to give a little bit of hope to the families.
It is, again, no different than a child, but to make sure the police officer's family doesn't get stuck with that burden.
Right.
It shouldn't be happening. There's no reason why this officer is dead other than, there's a bad person on the streets that shouldn't have been on the streets. And it's something we have to do. We felt like it's a calling to us, that we wanted to make sure that we as an organization, we can't be political, right? So we as an organization put our foot forward and says, we are backing the blue. We are standing with them. And not only are we going to stand with them, we're going to stand with them at their darkest moment. Mm-hmm. When they lose someone, we're going to make sure we are standing there right side by side, taking care of that family as the family should be taken care of.
Right. And I remember the wake services and the funeral of Anastasio Sakos. So prior to coming to Suffolk County, I was a New York City police officer. And I was actually in the same academy class as Officer Sakos.
Oh, wow.
And now I don't want to misrepresent, like I didn't really know him personally, but he was a familiar face. Mm-hmm. We weren't in the same classrooms, but I did see him on the muster deck. I saw him in the gym. I saw him around the building. He was a familiar face to me. And when somebody who's a familiar face is taken like that, it's kind of hard to deal with. Like, holy shit, this guy was alive. We have a lot of the same life experiences, right? So to be able to hear that his family was able to be taken care of and shown support right away, and to be able to see the community rallying behind the family, because the wife, had young kids too.
2 young kids.
Right. So it's really warm and comforting to see that there are groups out there taking care of us, because everybody starts identifying with these people that you have helped along the way.
Yeah. So after Sakos had passed away, the very next year, we lost 2 additional NYPD officers, Mora and Rivera. In a very sad, very tragic, walking into an apartment building in Harlem, thinking everything's good. His mom, who called the police, showed her shield. She was a corrections officer in the city. So what happens when a cop sees another cop's shield, right, or another law enforcement officer's shield, like their temperature goes down, right? Feel a little relaxed, like, okay, there's another person
We're
here.
amongst
They
friends.
called us. We're amongst friends.
Yep.
This should be fine. Let's go find out what's going on with her son, see what's happening, knock on the door of his bedroom. Hey, come on out. Let's talk. Let's figure this out. Well, as soon as they walked down that hallway, the first knock on the door, he shot through it.
Yeah.
And he shot through it, and he took both their lives, and that was a big blow to our estate, to our whole area, not just New York City. We felt it here in Suffolk County. We felt it in Nassau. You felt it in Westchester. I mean, the whole country felt it.
100%.
Right? It was absolutely brutal, absolutely devastating. And, and that was starting the trend of, okay, we're going to do this, and you kind of pray and hope you get some time off, right? You pray that, you don't get to do another cop's funeral, right? Because it really shouldn't be happening. 23, thank God we didn't lose anybody. 24 comes, and, it was another difficult year. It was another difficult year. We lost Jonathan Diller that year. Mm-hmm. We lost Jonathan Diller to a guy who should have never been walking the streets.
Right. And that was another national news story because of the background of the bad guy that took his life.
That guy should have never been walking the streets. Yeah. He should have never, ever been in that situation. And, and that stuff just gets yourself enraged.
Right.
When, this perp should have been put away. And under any other state would have had him put away, but our state didn't.
Right.
Our state had him walking the streets, because he deserved to be out. Right. He deserved to be out so much, that when he woke up that morning, he stuck what they call them, a shiv, when you're in jail. He stuck that up his ass because he knew if he may be going to jail today.
Right.
This is the kind of guy.
I'm prepared to hide this kind of weapon.
Because I may go to jail today. So, I'm going to do this, and, we'll see how the day goes. That day didn't go very well for Jonathan Diller.
No.
It didn't go very well for Stephanie.
Yeah.
It didn't go very well for her son, Ryan. It was a pretty terrible day for them. Pretty terrible rest of their life for them.
Right.
And the more I do this and the more I get to know these families, the more I feel like we have to do more. We have to do better. And really that started my wanting to get a little more involved in politics, which we won't talk about because I can't, because I'm talking about promise of hope. But it wanted me to get more involved.
Right. And as any person should feel that motivation to get involved and see the change they want to see, right? Because when these criminals are getting arrested 14, 15 times in their life, they're showing that they're probably not rehabable. They're probably not going to become positive contributors to society. They need penalties that fit crimes. You need to serve your time in correctional facilities. And maybe if you are jailed for a significant period of time, you'll learn your lesson, or you'll get some of the training that they do offer in these jails as well. They're called correctional facilities for a reason. And we talk about this all the time. Sheriff Toulon's been on the show. Mm-hmm. Lou Viscusi, the president of the Corrections Union, has been on the show. And they are correctional facilities that try to teach these people how to be reintroduced to society. And when you have legislation like the bail reform that came through in New York State, where these people are not being put into these correctional facilities for a significant time, they're not getting that corrective training where they can be reintroduced to the job market with some sort of skill. It's just a recipe for recidivism. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing now.
What has the state done in response to Jonathan Diller? They really haven't made it much better than what it was prior to him.
No. And I got to be honest, I saw a bill that was just recently signed, where, the widows, they get 50% off on their taxes.
Right.
Which is wonderful, right? I think the widows should get everything.
It's a step in the right direction.
It's a step in the right
100%.
direction. But again, remember, the same people that approved Jonathan Diller's killer out on the street.
Right. It's crazy.
The same people. So they're trying to get in the good graces again, but, little too little, little too late. In some of these cases.
Yep. It's almost coming up with the solutions to the problems they're creating to begin with. Right? Yeah. It's like you're creating your own market to be able to go out there and say, look at what I'm fixing, look at what I've done. But the changes that were done, 5, 6, 7 years ago are what led to the point we're at now that need to be fixed.
100%. I'm sure Stephanie Diller would be thrilled to pay full property taxes right now.
Right.
So long as Jonathan was here.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I'm pretty like I said, I was good. I was happy to see it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other second was like, she should have never been in that spot.
Right.
She should not be eligible for 50% off taxes.
Right.
Let's fix that problem. Right? Let's go
100%.
fix that problem. Let's
100%.
not worry about their property taxes. How about we just fix bail reform?
Root causes to the problem.
Root causes to the problem. And don't stand there in front of cameras and make it look like you just did a huge thing for everyone. You killed Jonathan Diller.
Right.
You know? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
You know, when you show up to these funerals and you see the heartache in their family's eyes, you know,
these are real people.
these are real people.
Real victims that are forgotten throughout that whole bail reform process.
110%.
Yeah.
110%. You know, and it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But look, you know, it was good they did it. Great.
It is a step in the right direction.
Step in the right direction.
Something we'd
But
be
let's
foolish
fix the
not to support.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely. You know, listen, who doesn't want to do more for widows?
Right.
They deserve
Absolutely.
everything they get. And listen, not everybody was Jonathan Diller, right? Some people died from different causes.
Right.
9/11 terrorism, just going back to the last NYPD Officer Islam.
Right.
You know, this was just some crazy guy from, Nevada, that drove across the country and stole his life. Bail reform had nothing to do with him.
Right.
Right.
It's not.
He shouldn't have died, but it wasn't because of bail reform.
Right. Bail reform is not the cause of every problem, but it has created some.
But it has
problems.
created a very large amount of
Yes.
problems.
Yes.
I don't want to minimize.
Yeah.
Standing with law enforcement has, been such a passionate thing of ours, and it's brought us great friendships. Friendships with you guys at the PBA, which we really appreciate. Friends with our, brothers and sisters in Nassau County, in their PBA in their department, and friendships with the NYPD and all the guys there who are phenomenal, and which is great. And we love to build those friendships. And in the foundation, we felt strongly that, hey, listen, if we're going to pay for the funerals, which is great, and it's needed, wonderful. But we go a step further and we make sure every year that all those widows and children that lost a loved one, that we help fund their funds for each of these PBAs. So we help fund, Suffolk counties, which we just got together a few weeks back, and Promise of Hope donated $30,000 to the Widows and Children's Fund for Suffolk County. We donated also $30,000 to Nassau County Widows and Children's Fund, and we donated $15,000 to New York City's. Then everyone says, why less for this city? It's simple. We like to be realists, right? We wish the whole world was a little bit on the realist. Two reasons. One, the city gets a ton of funding from a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So their Widows and Children's Fund is very well supported, but we wanted to make sure we still show that we support. And unfortunately, they use more of Promise of Hope's assets than any other department.
Right. It makes sense.
We just paid for Islam's funeral. We paid for too many before that, 9 other funerals before that,
right.
Which all happened to be NYPD, unfortunately, so, we give them a little bit less.
Right.
But at the same point, at the end of the day, they get more.
Right. Right.
But it isn't, as sometimes we'll kid around about it, in a joking way, but everyone's very serious that when it comes to taking care of our widows and children's funds, that this is something that's done and it's taken care of for them because they deserve it.
Right. And those annual donations, because you've been giving us $30,000 for years now, mm-hmm. That money goes a long way for the Suffolk PBA to support we call them our legacy families, mm-hmm. right? So every year we do a legacy luncheon leading up to Police Memorial Weeks. We take the families of our fallen out to a lunch every year, very nice lunch. We go down to Washington, D.C. to that police memorial. We make sure that whatever families take the trip, we cover their hotel rooms. We bring them out to a nice lunch. We make sure they have a nice time and feel the love and support from the active members that are down there as they're going down to remember their loved ones. Yeah. So that the widows and children's money that you give us, we refer to it as our legacy fund. That money goes a long way to making sure that these families feel that constant connection to us. And we make sure, we would never forget them, but it's giving them the reminder that they're not forgotten, because we do host several events with them throughout the year.
Which, I could tell you from personal experience with, as you all know, I'm engaged to Lisa Tuzzolo.
Yep.
Who is
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you very much. Yep. I'm very lucky. She's a little less lucky, but I'm very lucky. She's a remarkable woman who. I was a very happy single guy, and I was enjoying my single life, and then our paths crossed in building the Suffolk Police Foundation together, and everything was good. We stayed very professional, and one day we had dinner together, and I could tell you, I walked out at dinner and said, "I'm marrying that woman." There was no mistaking about it. Like, and before that, I was just like, "Yeah, she's cute," and then I got to know her, and then I'm like, "Oh boy, I'm in trouble." But being in her life and being in the boys' lives, and watching them do, the stuff with other widows.
Right.
It is a community that is beautiful. It's a community they should have never been in.
Right.
When I'm sitting out, and with some of the other widows, and they kind of refer to me as like, Mike's just all our husbands now, but when I'm out, and it's Lisa, it's Stephanie, it's Catherine Abair, it's Christina Moon, who's FDNY widow. When I'm out with them, and we'll go see a show together, we'll go have lunch together, we'll go do dinner, whatever it is, and I watch their relationship, and I watch how close all their kids are. You can't help but to think to yourself, wow, this is just beautiful and amazing how they support each other and how they connect with each other. And then in the back, you also have to think to yourself, they should never know each other.
Right.
They should never have ever known each other.
Right.
But it's those funds that help connect those together,
yep.
Which really is an additional layer, which maybe you guys don't even realize of how much you're doing, is when you're bringing the widows back together and you're doing a luncheon and they're making a connection with another widow and, or another family member who lost their police officer spouse. That connection means more to them than anything we could possibly do to them. They could actually sit there and cry and laugh, and they've been through the same pain.
Right.
So those widows and children's funds are vitally important.
Right.
And I want to tell everyone, if you have some extra money, you want to give it to Promise Hope, great, we'll take it. But it needs to go to those widows and children's funds, because that connection, that relationships that they develop really helps them 100 times over.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up your engagement to Lisa Tuzzolo. She's a great woman too. We've built a relationship with her, along this journey. I'd be remiss if we don't bring up her late husband Paul, who was killed in the line of duty in the Bronx, November 4th, 2016.
Yeah.
Right, he was responding to a domestic incident call, and it's one of those tragedies that we talk about. And now with all the work you've done with helping these widows and children, and you're seeing that firsthand, and you're living through it with them.
Just to add to that story, I was in the City Academy when that happened, when Paul passed away. That truly affected me, and realizing what I was getting myself into, because I didn't really, when I became a cop, I didn't realize how often this happens. It happens maybe not every single day, but it happens throughout the country.
Right.
Cops put their lives on the line, and it was really a surreal moment during that academy class, because we were on field training when that happened. They would send us out for a couple of weeks before you go back to the academy and you graduate. One of the recruits was actually involved in that shooting. It was really a crazy moment. And he was in the company close to my company, so I used to see him all the time, and it was a really surreal thing to witness go through. And it was after the fact. It's been a pleasure getting to know Lisa. She's a tremendous person, like you guys have said, and it really brings me back to that time every time I see her and every time we talk. I remember that so vividly, because I was getting ready to come out as a cop.
Right. It starts to hit home.
Being a young really cop and just still really being in the academy, just think of that. That's like such a jarring thing. Like, holy shit, this could really cost me my life.
Yeah.
And yet you're stuck to it, right? You stuck to it and said, I'm going to do this regardless. I'm going to put it out there regardless.
And one of the things I think that's very important, and I always tell the younger guys especially, when you have a line of duty death, it's important to show up. Because God forbid it's you one day. Like if something happened to me one day, I would hope that my brothers and sisters in blue would be there for my family. It's not about you. It's not about the person. It's about their families. Yeah. And you do a tremendous job with Promise of Hope, really taking care of the family and taking away that financial burden and allowing that family to grieve, because that's an important process because it's so unexpected generally in these situations.
It is, listen, it's been an amazing journey with the foundation, how it's transformed from children's to police officers. And, it changed me as a person. Mm-hmm. It changed me as a person. I'm a businessman. I'm very lucky. Me and my partner, we've become very successful. And, once you start doing the foundation, two things happen to you. One is you're asking people for money. Right. And now you're responsible for other people's money.
Which is uncomfortable.
Which is uncomfortable. And it's a big responsibility, right? I mean, some people write us checks for $10, $20, $30, $40,000. And you want to make sure you do the right thing with their money. Right. So you really had to, be conscious that you're going to always do the right thing. Right. Because I would never, ever in a million years want to be like, maybe he shouldn't have done that with my money. So you want to make sure it goes to our causes and the causes that we believe in, and, the other part of it is, you really want to try to keep yourself in a positive light, right? Mm-hmm. When before I was a businessman and a business owner and, a single guy, I really didn't worry about my reputation that much. Everything was fine and good. And, I always lived a good, clean life. But, when you have the foundation, I owned a couple of bars that turned into nightclubs, and, once you add alcohol and midnight, it sometimes is an ugly thing, and, I remember making a conscious decision with my partner. We both sat down and we said, these bars, these nightclubs could have an effect on our foundation. Like one bad thing could happen. Somebody slips somebody a Mickey. Somebody gets in a bad bar fight. Somebody gets killed when they drank too much from our place. This can have an effect on our foundation. So instead of getting rid of the foundation, we got rid of the bars.
I think that says a lot about you and your partner, Scott Coletti, because, like you put it, you guys you're businessmen, right? You're out there, the whole point of being in business is to make money. But you found this passion in the foundations that you run, Promise of Hope, started the Suffolk County Police Foundation, right? So the passion that you had for doing good for the people overcame the potential greed of making an extra couple bucks. And I think that says a lot about the character of you guys. And, that should really resonate with people as to how, you guys are genuine, good people trying to do a good thing for the community.
Listen, it was a decision. It was a tough decision that we had to make, mm-hmm. but we always knew ultimately the foundation is the most important, giving back to the community is the most important. Obviously, I still need to run my companies. They still got to remain profitable. They still got to be successful, and we won't let that go. We'll always take care of our customers. We'll always do the right thing. But the foundation, for us, is at our core. And through our company, just before I came here, we were planning our next gala, right? I had, 12 of, my people that work for me, or we work together. I like to refer to them. We all work together. No one works for me. Mm-hmm. We all work for each other to make sure we're successful. We're all sitting around at the table figuring out how we could plan the gala, So the foundation has become embedded into the company. And the people that we work together with absolutely love being part of the foundation. They love when they hear Promise of Hope's name on the news that, hey, listen, we helped that family. We helped that cop. We helped this. They love being part of it. And, so to get rid of, the two bars, really, it was a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. It was a no-brainer. The foundation is absolutely number one.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the gala, because the Promise of Hope Foundation Gala is one of the biggest events of the year in Suffolk County, right? I mean, we've been going for several years now, and every year you come up with a new cause that you're raising money for that particular night. I think half the money goes to the foundation and then half the money goes to a particular cause, right? So, or some sort of breakdown like that. And, sometimes it's to help a young mother who lost a child. Sometimes it's to help a child who lost a parent, whatever the case may be, depending on what might have been a major story that particular year. But something that's really impressive about that night is at some point in the night, you take the mic and you tell everybody, we're going to see how much money we could raise in the next 5 minutes. And it's incredible to see the generosity in that room, right? Because I've seen it multiple times now where within 5 minutes, you raise like $50,000. And it's incredible. And it was something that the first time I saw it, I was really impressed. And then when I saw that happens every year to that level, I was blown away.
I'm not sure how the crazy idea jumped into our heads to do it. But the idea behind that whole exercise was all those people in the room that night, 600-700 people,
right?
They give all their hard-earned money to us so we could go do the right thing. All the things we've just discussed. But when I go to the funeral, when Lisa, she comes to the funerals with me now, we go and we get to receive the gift of gratitude, right? And I could tell you, I've done a lot of crazy shit in my life. I've tried it all. Nothing feels better than the gift of someone being grateful for something you've done for them. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the greatest high in the entire world when you just helped someone at their darkest moment. And you walk out of there very sad that a child had passed, but very good that you were able to make a difference. Right? And it's such a profound feeling. So what my idea is if we do this thing where we put 5 minutes on the clock, and we take the person out of the room, right? So the person never knows who in the room.
Another very cool aspect of it.
They don't know who's getting this. Like, they don't even know why they're there, right? So we remove that person or that charity out of the room. We tell them they're going to be interviewed. And while they're gone, we talk about their story, talk about whatever their causes and what help they need. And we take those 5 minutes and we raise money. Last year, we raised $110,000 in 5 minutes.
Wow.
$110,000 in 5 minutes. And, but the idea is to bring them back in the room. Right? So you bring them back into the room. Now they get to be now they get to feel that gratitude that I feel. That's what I wanted everyone to feel. I wanted everyone to feel that gratitude that I feel when I leave knowing we did the right thing. So they gave their money, we put it all together, and then we instantly hand that family a check, and they get to see that profound gratitude on their face, when they receive that money that they had no idea they were getting. And now everyone in that room gets to walk away with that feeling of, wow, we just changed somebody's life.
Right.
Like, we just made a huge difference, a major impact. And that was the whole purpose of that. The whole thing was really so everyone in the room felt that gratitude of what it feels to give.
I love that, because when you get that sense of purpose, you cannot put a price tag on feeling purposeful. And it's one of my favorite nights of the year. I know it's coming up in a couple months. I think in March, right?
March 14th, Villa Lombardi's.
Yep.
So anyone out there, if you didn't buy your tickets yet, or a table or a sponsorship, we still have opportunities. There's always an opportunity to give us money, but it's March 14th, Villa Lombardi's. And if you could go on to promiseofhopefoundation.org, and you could. I got it right.
You did get it right.
I didn't screw that up.
It's not a .com.org.
That's right. It's promiseofhopefoundation.org. And you could go on there. You could buy tickets. You could buy a sponsorship. I could promise you it's a magical evening, right?
Yeah,
it's a special night. It's not your average gala. It's not your average fundraiser. It's moving, right? It sucks for a few minutes because you got to watch all the work that we did, and the work that we did is beautiful, but it's painful. Mm-hmm. And then once we could get you moved past that, I'm a little biased, but it's a special night.
It really is.
It is a special night. And you had brought up earlier about, events like this, bringing, the widows and families together. It gives them that sense of, I'm not in this alone, right? There's people out there that not only do they empathize with me, but they relate to what I've gone through too. So, and I'd be remiss, we already spoke a little bit about Anastasios Sakos and, my connection with him going through the same academy, but I'd be remiss if I don't bring up Ray Hebert also. Mm-hmm. So when I was in the NYPD, I worked in the 112 precinct with Ray, and I was actually Ray's PBA delegate before I came out to Suffolk County. So I do have a personal relationship with Ray. I did. Yeah. We were friends. We went to Christmas parties together. We hung out in the precinct. We rode in an unmarked car together at one point. Ray was a great guy. So it's heartwarming for me to be able to see his widow at some of these events too, and know that she's out there, keeping Ray's name alive, talking about Ray, but also feeling that camaraderie with some of the other families out there.
Yeah, Catherine, she's amazing.
Yeah.
And the two kids are beautiful kids. And listen, it's a struggle. It's a struggle every day for her, but, she's a fighter and she fights through it. And, she believes, she believes she's going to be okay. And and listen, sometimes they just put on their tough face, right? Because they got to do it for the kids.
Right.
But she's remarkable. And I get to hear all these stories about, all of them, and it's just like, geez, boy, I would love to have hung out with them. They had to be a really good time.
Oh, I got to tell you. So Ray had one of those smiles that could light up a room, right? And he had a great laugh. So when we'd be joking around, because he was an anti-crime guy, right? Mm-hmm. Very active cop. I was a patrol guy. So, if we would happen to be in the precinct at the same time processing arrests, you knew you were going to have a few laughs along the way, mm-hmm. right? He was such a great guy, a great cop. When I left the NYPD to come to Suffolk County, he had just gone to special victims, right? He was going to earn his detective shield. Mm-hmm. So I didn't actually get to meet Catherine prior to me leaving New York City because they had met after I left. Mm-hmm. So I actually met her for the first time at the Promise of Hope Gala.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I can assure you she'll be there again this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the ladies that come, I'm sure Stephanie will be there and Christina Moon, and we invite them all out.
Yeah.
And for some it's too much. And for some they want to come out and support us, but they'll be there and they support us, and we love the fact that they're with us and they're supporting us and they're cheering for our success, because they want to make sure that God forbid that happens again, those families will be taken care of moving forward the way their families have been taken care of.
Yeah, it's probably nice having that community together too, and when that does happen another time, that they're there to help those widows too.
It is such. I really got to see it when Jonathan Diller passed. Mm-hmm. Lisa and I were working on the police foundation together. Actually, Lou Titone and I were out giving a pitch at F3 to our potential donors, some of our first potential donors, and it was March 25th, and Lisa couldn't join us, which she was very upset about. She couldn't join us because we scheduled it the same day. NYPD did an ice skating thing with all the widows and children.
Okay,
and so we wrap up our event. Lisa wraps up her event. She reaches out to me and says, "Hey, listen, I'm on my way home from the city. I just want to let you know there's a cop that's been shot." And word is it's not good. And, to watch, to get the call from Lisa, who's a widow, first thing was she's a friend, right? At this point we weren't dating. We really had no idea this was all going to happen, but she's a friend. She's someone I care about. And I was like, so she told me, I'm like, oh my God. She's like, listen, you may get a call shortly, And I'm like, okay. And I hung up the phone and I said to myself, oh shit, she's a widow. Is she okay?
Right.
How is she doing right now?
Does this create something?
You're reliving this whole thing right now? So I jump back on the phone and I call her and I'm like, hey, how are you? How are you feeling? And she shared how she was feeling to me. And of course, it's not a comfortable position for her to be in. And, so through the process of, Jonathan did ultimately pass, and now we're working on the funeral arrangements. And, and I'm watching her and all the other widows, how they get together and they get themselves in a position where they can now go help this widow, it's beautiful, right? It's so beautiful that these widows are going to get together and they're going to go help this widow. And then you think to yourself, this is a fucking horrible thing. Yeah. Like none of these people should ever be in this situation to have to do something so unbelievable. And, and at Jonathan's is really where I got to see it, in full display. And I'm like, wow, this is completely unbelievable how all these widows, because of them being able to get together and know each other through different department of events, they get together now and they go support the next widow and they make sure that she's loved and she's taken care of and she's looked out for. And it's that created the relationship with Lisa and Stephanie and Ryan. And, we are, Aunt Lisa and Uncle Mike now. Little Ryan's like Aunt Lisa and Uncle Mike. We've become so close with them. So it is a beautiful thing how the widows do take care of each other and how they support each other. And we love having them in our event. Yeah. We love seeing them there.
Mike, it's great to hear all these stories, and it's great to be able to know about the organizations that are out there that are helping these, police families as they go through the worst times of their lives, and the civilian families that go through the worst times of their lives when they lose a child, right? So I hope this brings even more attention to the Promise of Hope Foundation and the work that you guys are doing. Like you said, last year with 24 children, you don't think it's necessarily that there's more children dying, but there's more awareness. So I'm hoping that bringing you on this kind of platform on the podcast brings more awareness to the Promise of Hope Foundation and just enables you to do some more of the good work you guys have been doing for the last several years.
Well, it's great. I'm glad I'm here. Mm-hmm. I just want to wrap up by one more thing. Our ultimate goal as a foundation is obviously to take care of the children in the line of duties. But, 9/11 cancer is something we can't cover. And it's not that we can't because we don't want to. We can't because we can't afford to.
There's so many.
Yes. 80 on average, 80 a year. Emergency service workers, 80 a year are passing away from 9/11 cancer. Wow. Which is an unimaginable number. My ultimate dream is to get those covered.
Wow. Right? That would be incredible.
My ultimate dream is to get, I hate when I hear about an officer losing their life and, and we have to define it differently, mm-hmm. right? Because, what is the difference between Jonathan Dillard doing a pullover and this guy walking into a pile of debris that he knows is going to be harmful to his body, right? Like both of those cops knew this could end not well, but both of those cops still did it, right? So I hate having to define the two. I pray one day we get enough sponsorship where we're able to cover those funerals.
I think that's a great message to lead off with, and I think that's a great goal for the foundation to have. And I thank you for all the work you're doing. And, we appreciate having you on the show today.
Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.